Thanks for joining me on episode 840 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hi, my name is Aaron Walker. I'm president and founder of the Mastermind Playbook. Masterminds are a great way to intentionally grow yourself and invest in others. And one way to be inspired to serve others well is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my good friend, Scott Mader.
Or at any time, you can break that loop. It's a cycle, it's a loop, so you can begin on either end. You can either begin by working on yourself, or you can begin by working on your relationships. And in either case, as you begin to up-level yourself and you begin to up-level your relationships, you begin to change your attitude. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about investing in yourself through stewarding your treasures, I talk with you about why all too often we think of employment as security. I share why paychecks, career, and jobs are never security, and I also share why we often get trapped into believing that this is security instead. As we talk about stewarding your treasures, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without costing yourself an extra dime? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show. If you enjoy the show when you're ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. Yesterday, I talked about how we often think of our salary, our employment, our job, our career as security, especially if we work for someone else. I've seen it happen in self-employed people too, but not nearly as often. But we think of employment and income as security, when in reality, that's not what our security lies in. I've seen people that say, I've got a great job. I work for the state government or the federal government, so it's very secure. It's very unlikely that I'm ever going to lose that job or lose that income. And then a government furlough happens and they go 6 months without pay. I've seen people who are working for a company or a corporation and they say, again, I'm a senior position. I'm very secure. And then that company gets bought out and there's a merger and their position is done away with. So it's not even a matter of your position or where you are at. It's a mindset thing of thinking about employment, thinking about your career, thinking about your income, thinking about these things twofold. One, that they're always going to be there. And two, that is where your security comes from. The truth is, your paycheck, your career, your job, none of these things are ever security because all of them are temporary. All of them could go away at any time. My old joke is when you work for a company, you're self-employed with one client, that company. And if something happens to that client, you're now self-employed with no clients. And any self-employed person will tell you that there is a certain amount of security that comes from having a diverse set of clients or diverse income streams. Even if you're employed by someone else, you should be able to find multiple ways of generating income so that if one of them goes away, you're not starting from ground zero. We often think of it and get trapped into believing that's where our security lies because every Friday or every other Friday or once a month, whatever it is, the income fairy shows up and you magically get a check in the mail or you magically get a deposit into your accounts. But the truth is that income doesn't actually come from nowhere. It was generated somewhere. And what generated it is activity and effort and energy and work. Somehow or another, there was an idea, there was a service, there was a product. something that was purchased by someone else. And that means that there's work to be done to generate that. And when you forget about that, when you stop focusing on the underlying work, then you stop striving to grow yourself. You stop developing, you stop looking for opportunities, you stop striving. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I wanted to touch on it again today. We're theming this week on growing yourself because the truth is your security comes from two things: your relationships, and I would include in that your relationship with God as well as with others, and yourself. Not in an arrogant way. This isn't it all depends on me kind of thing. That's why I put relationships first. But there is a degree to which your effort and your mindset and your beliefs, that's what really creates those opportunities. You have to surround yourself with other people, positive people that will lift you up and help you grow. But at the same time, you also have to recognize that you're responsible for your own life. It's what we were talking about yesterday. There is no one else that is responsible for you. Outside of the relationships that you build with God and with others, it's all dependent upon what's inside of you. And those two things feed together, because if you have a negative attitude, if you have a bad mindset, then you're not going to be building good relationships. And if you're not building good relationships, then that's going to damage your mindset and your belief and your ability to grow yourself. It's a negative feedback loop. But at the same time, or at any time, you can break that loop. It's a cycle, it's a loop. So you can begin on either end. You can either begin by working on yourself, or you can begin by working on your relationships. And in either case, as you begin to up-level yourself and you begin to up-level your relationships, you begin to change your attitude, or you begin to change the people that you surround yourself with, what you will find is that now becomes a positive feedback loop. And often the easiest place to start is, what's my next smallest action? Or what's the next tiny physical thing I can do that begins to get me moving in the right direction? Because the truth is, what usually holds us back is the fact that we're overwhelmed. We feel like change is too big, too massive, and too unknown. But the truth is, you can figure anything out. You can achieve just about anything that you want. Maybe not exactly the way that you think, but you can achieve what you need. Because if you recognize that where real security comes from is the relationships I build and the attitude and mindset that I develop. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of treasures, you can sign up for our treasures tips by going to inspiredstewardship.com/treasures or text in the U.S. 44222 treasures tips. And we'll send you 5 weeks of our best tips on stewarding your treasures. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.